June 1st, 1944. A sodden field on the Norfolk coast. England. Mist crawling low over a cluster of canvas tents in the cold, metallic scent of diesel and rain. You are there, crouched behind a fold of sodden tarpaulin, listening. A distant motor hums, not loud enough to be real tanks, but close enough that the sound stitches into the imagination. Men in muddy boots move like ghosts between tents, their breath steaming in the lamplight. Corporal Thomas Reed of the Royal Engineers fingers a length of wire, his gloved fingers numb, and watches a canvas silhouette of a Sherman tank as if it might suddenly lurch. Engine coughing into life. The silhouette is an exacting mock-up. Stretched canvas over a wooden frame, painted in a hurried, convincing olive drab. The turret is a hollow shell. A rope inside runs to a team of men who can make the gunnery. Hatch click and a wooden barrel roll, as if the gunner had shifted his sights. Across the way, in a separate compound, a radio operator, Sergeant Alan Fletcher, 12th Communications, sits with a receiver pressed to his ear. His hands move with practiced rhythm over keys and dials, sending bursts of talk that sound like the nervous banter of a brigade. Convoy moving, ETA-09, Door 0, supply load, rations, ammo, spare parts. The language is spare, precise, the sort of mundane chatter that confirms the existence of the unseen. Fletcher watches the night sky for enemy spotter planes, then returns to his log, aware that every syllable he feeds into the ether will be picked up, interpreted, and reported by German listening posts across the channel. Nearby, someone lights a cigarette. The smell of tobacco and wet. Canvas mixes with the metallic tang of petrol. From a line of real jeeps parked between the dummy tanks, men laugh softly, voices low, trading jokes about the ghost crew who keep the camp awake practicing drill for units that don't exist. They call it theater. The higher-ups call it deception. For the lower ranks, it's a wet, awkward job that demands realism. Footprints must be genuine. Laundry hung to dry must be the correct size for the unit they are impersonating. And the campfires must be arranged so that German reconnaissance planes will see smoke in the right places. At Ooze 3:15, a black Land Rover pulls up. A slim figure steps out. Lieutenant Colonel David Strangeways, wrapped in collar to chin, binoculars slung, and a list of signal nets in his hand. He moves through the mock encampment with the precision of a man who knows how illusions are built. He inspects the radio nets, listens to the operators, checks that the timing of vehicle movements matches the maps of traffic the enemy expects. Where the original planners at Schaeff had drawn sketches, Strangeways brings theater direction, radio schedules must mimic real units, supply dumps must be in plausible locations, and every inflatable tank must sit where a recon flight would have seen combat formations before. He meets Patton's name here like a talisman. Across the hedgerows and across classified cables, General George S. Patton, swaggering, famous, openly posted to a command in Britain, is the star of this production. The Germans have seen him. Photographs circulate in the papers. He is loud, opinionated, and exactly the kind of commander they would expect to lead the real invasion. Patton is the bait. Strangeways and his team lace the bait with illusion. The 1st U.S. Army Group, FUSAG, is given radio traffic, signboards, motor movements, even the footprints of a panzer division, all acting out a rehearsed script. On the eastern edge of the field, a crew of sappers is kneeling, careful with a small crate of soap and canned peaches. They are staging a supply dump. The crates are marked with the unit insignia they are impersonating. The soap bars are wrapped in the correct paper, and the peaches are the right brand. This is forensic deception. Every trace must be legible to an enemy intelligence officer who will comb through photographs and captured documents. Men in plain khaki take photographs of the camp from different angles, then burn the clippings to produce the correct kind of charred edges that indicate a hurried field destroy before leaving them where a German agent might discover and report them. And above all of this, the sky is busy, not with bombers, but with conspicuous benign movement. A solitary Wellington bomber, carefully routed, makes a low-altitude pass at dawn, its cameras whirring. The photographs from that flight will later be altered, doctored with shadows and shapes that suggest the outlines of real armor. The film will be processed, printed, and fed into the German intelligence machine as fresh, unassailable evidence. The enemy will see what you want them to see. Yet the theater is not all props and paint. A hidden network of double agents feeds corroboration directly into German hands. Juan Pujol Garcia, known to the Abwehres Garbu, and other turned agents spin, tales that reinforce the narrative, troop concentrations continuing to swell behind the Pas-de-Calais, the imminence of an invasion there rather than in Normandy. Their messages are a steady whisper, perfectly tuned. Fletcher's radio chatter and Garbo's reports join up like overlapping brushstrokes on a canvas, producing the illusion of a vast fighting force, not just a few tents and dummies, but a credible, dangerous army poised to strike where the Germans least expect. By 0440, the field is quiet. But the deception is humming like a living thing. Men in the mock camp tidy cigarette butts into a heap that will later be discovered. A dummy radio operator opens an old field manual and leaves it open at the right page. A jeep moves, kicks up dust in the exact pattern a reconnaissance photograph would capture. The storm outside has not abated, but inside this small, ordinary-seeming operation, a painstaking, patient construction is taking form, not steel and men, but a story told with silence, with shadow and with routine. Corporal Reed takes one last look at the hollow, Sherman, and imagines the German officer who will inspect the photographs at Abwehr headquarters the next week and see exactly what they hope he will see. A vast armored force gathering in Kent and Sussex, commanded by a man who loves headlines and tanks. The German officer will be human. He will want to be right. He will, Reed thinks, be delighted to confirm what his eyes and ears tell him. That certainty, the enemy's certainty, is the goal. June 6, 1944. Calais, France, inside the reinforced concrete belly of the German 15th. Army headquarters. The air is thick with cigarette smoke, sweat, and the steady clatter of typewriters. Rain hammers the slit windows, and somewhere deep in the complex, a teleprinter chatters like an agitated insect. Oberstleutnant Franz Meyer adjusts his headphones, the metal cold against his temples. He's a signals intelligence officer, skilled and meticulous, the sort of man who lives by patterns, frequencies, call signs, transmission logs. Tonight the ether is alive. Dozens of American radio operators, or what he believes are American radio operators, are sending traffic consistent with a massive buildup east of the Thames. Mayer listens, translating shorthand in his notebook. 3rd Armored Repositioning. 17th Infantry requesting fuel trucks. Fusag Logistics confirm arrival of new tank battalions. He exhales slowly. It matches everything they've heard for weeks. Across the room, General Gunther Blumentritt, Chief of Staff for the 15th Army, stands hunched over a table marked with grease pencil arrows and unit markers. The map shows the channel, the Pas de Calais bulging like a shield, and darker pencil marks sketching potential Allied landing points. His eyes track between the scratches on the map, and a series of reconnaissance photos clipped to a board. There are tanks there, unmistakable shapes. Sherman's lined up in neat rows near Dover, or so it appears. He taps a pencil against his wrist. Inflated expectations, he mutters, but it's an attempt at humor that falls flat. He has been studying Allied preparations since late 1943, and the logic has always pointed the same way. The shortest crossing, the best roads, the most defensible landing zone, Calais, the Pas de Calais. Here, the captain approaches, boots echoing on the polished floor. Herr General, decrypts from Abwehr Section West. He lays a folder down. Another report from Agent Garbo. He says the Allies are keeping their main striking force in reserve. He believes Normandy is a diversion. Blumentritt's eyebrows rise. Garbo has proven reliable, precise, calm, a man who knows how to measure Allied activity without giving himself away. His reports often reinforce the signal's intercepts, a reassuring, matching thread in an otherwise chaotic tapestry. What of the weather? Blumentritt asks. The captain hesitates. Our meteorological units say the seas are still too rough for a major landing. Blumentritt nods. The logic holds. At ZO 210, a fresh batch of aerial photos arrives. Young officers clip them onto the board one by one. They show the same thing. Tents, supply crates, landing craft in neat rows. An army poised like a fist, waiting to strike. Blumentritt steps closer, squinting. Shadows fall the right way. Tracks in the mud match typical movement patterns. Laundry lines, refuse pits, fuel dumps. All the ordinary fingerprints of a living army. Patton, he murmurs. Mayer looks up from his desk. Sir? General George S. Patton. Their best, their boldest. Where he is, the real battle is. Blumentritt hasn't met him, but he has read everything intelligence has collected. His speeches, his tactics in North Africa and Sicily. Patton is ruthless, unpredictable, the sort of commander who would relish smashing the wall of the Atlantic defenses head-on. Reports place Patton in command of the 1st U.S. Army Group, Fusag, headquartered in southeastern England, right where the reconnaissance photographs show the largest Allied presence. Blumentritt exhales through his nose. The pieces align too perfectly. But Colonel Walter Tench, a lean man with a severe jaw, steps forward from a corner. Sir, Normandy has seen increased naval activity. Blumentritt shakes his head. A feint, it must be. Tench hesitates. Blumentritt doesn't notice. At 03 Omarsauersing, a courier bursts through the war room door carrying a fresh message from OB West. He is breathless, water pooling off his greatcoat. General, he says, voice cracking. Reports of airborne troops near Sainte-Mère-Église? Mayer swears softly. Blumentritt stiffens. Airborne, he says. Paratroopers? The courier nods vigorously. Blumentritt runs a hand over his face. Normandy again. Too many signs pointing toward that muddy, underdefended stretch of coastline. But he forces calm into his breath. The Allies know we expect Calais. Their only hope is to distract us. And Garbo? Mayer asks quietly. Blumentritt swallows. Garbo says the main assault is still coming here. Silence falls. This is the moment, the fragile hinge of history, and when a single doubt might have altered the German response. But instead, the illusion holds. A phantom army, built of rubber, rope, and radio waves across the channel, exerts more pressure than any steel formation ever could. At 0340, Blumentritt signs a confirmation. 15th Army remains in place. Normandy is to be monitored, but not reinforced. The real blow, he believes, is hours away at Calais. In the distance, thunder rumbles, except it isn't thunder. It's artillery, naval guns. The opening strike of Operation Neptune. Blumentritt glances at the clock. His jaw tightens. If this is a diversion, he mutters, it is the largest one in history. Mayer removes his headphones. He hears something he didn't expect. Frantic Allied radio traffic from the Normandy sector, overwhelming the net. For the first time, doubt prickles him like cold rain down his collar. But overhead, a courier aircraft passes, German, and the reconnaissance pod beneath its belly holds the last, most convincing photographs of the Phantom Army waiting at Calais. Illusion wins again. In 2 hours, German officers across France will be staring at those photos, insisting the main invasion hasn't begun yet. By then, thousands of Allied soldiers will be storming the beaches far to the west. The English coast, somewhere between Dover and Folkestone, the thin morning light bleeds through the fog as the army stirs awake. Not a real army, yet everything about it must feel, sound, and even smell like one. A wind rolls across the bluff, rattling the canvas hides that cover wooden tank forms. From a distance, the silhouettes look perfect, squat, threatening, lined up as though preparing to board. Landing craft for the thrust across the channel. Corporal Reed rubs the sleep from his eyes as he steps out of a tent, hearing the distant thump of waves on the shingle below. Dawn glints off the sea. Somewhere out there, beyond his sight, real soldiers are fighting for their lives on the sands of Normandy. He cannot see the battle, but he can hear whispering rumors in the camp. Men gathered around stoves murmur about paratroopers, about gliders, about beachheads and bombardments. They speak in low, tight voices, knowing full well that every move they make here, on this quiet bluff under a colorless sky, may decide whether German reinforcements break the invasion to pieces, or arrive far too late. At 0520, Reed and a squad of engineers begin inflating a new row of dummy Sherman tanks. The compressors growl softly. The canvas bodies rise like beasts waking from deep sleep. The men work quickly, checking seams, painting last-minute scuffs, dragging chains behind them to create fresh track marks. The ground is muddy from last night's rain. Perfect for fooling an enemy photo. Interpreter. Across the camp, Sergeant Fletcher and his signals team prepare for another round of transmissions. They've been given a dense schedule, artillery positioning reports, supply conversations, fictional unit movements, even the occasional staged argument over channel. Their work must simulate the nervous hum of a force, readying for an assault it will never make. Fletcher slides on his headphones, taps his pencil twice, and begins. This is Baker 3, confirming grid for landing craft assembly. He sends each message in the clipped staccato rhythm of a real American signalman. He imagines German headphones tuning in, eager to match these messages to the very photographs now being rushed across occupied France. This place must feel alive. It must pulse with the tension of imminent attack. By 06:00, the illusion reaches its crescendo. A jeep roars through the encampment, mud spraying behind. Men stiffen as they see the unmistakable silhouette inside. Broad shoulders, polished helmet, riding crop in hand. General George S. Patton. Not a double, not an actor. The real man. He stands in the rear of the jeep, surveying the dummy tanks, the tents, the bustle of staged logistics. Patton knows the Germans are watching him, if not with binoculars, then through the lens of double agent reports. His presence is a message carved in stone. I'm here. My army is here. This is where the real blow will fall. The jeep stops near Fletcher's signal struck. Patton steps down, boots slapping wet earth, coat flaring behind him. He doesn't speak to the radio operators. He doesn't need to. He only walks the line of dummy armor, nodding once or twice as though approving the deployment. To a German analyst, a figure like Patton inspecting the troops is unmistakable proof that this camp is genuine. Reed watches him from a distance. For a moment, even he forgets the tanks are hollow. Such is the power of presence, of spectacle. Then 2 MPs escort Patton back into the jeep, and it rockets off toward another sector of the deception line. More tents, more tanks, more theater. But the general's brief appearance has achieved exactly what Chef planned. Anyone observing from the channel sky or picking up chatter from informants will be convinced Fusag is real and ready to strike. At 07:15, a reconnaissance balloon is raised. Technicians photograph the camp as if gathering images for Allied planning. These photos will then be leaked through the right channels, accidentally discovered by German sympathizers or intercepted via controlled radio bursts. A web of authenticity is being spun, thread by thread. Meanwhile, a courier jeep tears into the camp. Mud flips skyward as brakes squeal. A young lieutenant leaps out, face pale. The landings are confirmed, he whispers to Fletcher. Omaha, Juneau, Sword, it's all happening. A breath passes through Fletcher's chest like ice. He imagines the chaos, men trapped under machine gun fire, bodies falling in surf churned white with sand and shrapnel. He forces himself back to the radio. He must keep transmitting. He must drown the Germans in noise. At Aero 8.10, an RAF liaison officer arrives, with word that a German recon plane is inbound. The camp's tempo shifts instantly. Men take positions. A few real vehicles move in loops to create engine patterns. Laundry lines sway with uniforms from fictitious divisions. A field kitchen releases deliberate plumes of smoke. The inflatable tanks sit perfectly still, each one angled exactly as a tank commander would have left it before loading. Then, faint at first, the whine of a Dornier engine slides across the morning sky. You can almost feel the tension as every man in the camp freezes. Heads tilt upward. The plane drifts over the coastline, low and deliberate, camera ports open. Reed counts the seconds under his breath. 1 pass. 2. 3. He knows the photos taken now, today, will reach German generals within hours. They will confirm everything the Germans fear. Patton's army is poised to crush the Pas de Calais. Meanwhile, 100 miles south, the real battle rages. And no German reinforcements are coming. Illusion is winning the war. June 6, 1944. La Roche-Guyon, France, headquarters of OB West, where Field Marshal Gerd von Rundstedt and his staff pick through the chaos of the morning's reports. The chateau's thick stone walls do little to quiet the rising storm of voices, boots, and clattering message tubes. Outside, the Seine flows calmly past, oblivious to the fact that the fate of Europe is being decided over maps and radio bursts. Inside the war room, a Luftwaffe liaison officer is shouting over the din. Our fighters confirm naval bombardment along the entire Normandy coast. Battleships, cruisers, thousands of landing craft. Thousands? General Falkenhorst snaps. Impossible. This must be a limited operation. The liaison opens his mouth, but before he can speak, another teleprinter clatters violently to life. A corporal tears the parchment and sprints to the central table. Message from 15th Army, he says, breath barely holding. General Blumentritt reports reconnaissance flights detected massive buildup still at Calais. Patton appears to remain in command of main forces. They believe Normandy is a diversion. The room stills. Von Rundstedt lifts his gray head. His cane taps the stone floor once. A diversion, he echoes. Yes, the enemy knows Calais is the decisive point, the shortest route. Patton would not waste himself on Normandy. His finger hovers over the map, tracing the coastlines. Everyone watches him. The old field marshal, cautious but brilliant, a man who has seen feints before. Bergdorf, the operations officer, clears his throat. Field Marshal, shall we release Panzer Group West to strike the beaches? Von Rundstedt hesitates. He wants the armor unleashed. Every fiber of his instinct screams it. But Berlin has tied his hands. Only Hitler can authorize the panzers to move. And Hitler is asleep. Has been for hours. At 0950, General Jodl calls from the Wolf's Lair, voice thin over the wired connection. The Führer is not to be disturbed. He believes the main thrust remains toward the Pas de Calais. Nothing indicates otherwise. Von Rundstedt exchanges, looks with his staff. Every indicator does point to Calais. The radio traffic, the reconnaissance photographs, the double agent confirmations, Patton's public appearances. Normandy is chaos, yes, but chaos is a tool in war. To the German mind, too messy to be real. Field Marshal, Falkenhorst insists again. We must counterattack now. If we wait... Von Rundstedt raises a hand. The Führer believes this is a feint. Until he decides otherwise, the armored reserves remain where they are. Somewhere, a typewriter stops mid-clack. The silence is suffocating. Then the door bursts open. A tall officer in a rain-soaked coat stands in the threshold, water dripping off his cap. Message from Army Group B, he calls. Rommel's headquarters. Reports indicate the landings are enormous, multiple divisions. He requests immediate release of the 12th SS Panzer and Panzer Lehr. The name Rommel crashes through the room like a thrown grenade. Erwin Rommel, the Desert Fox, knows deception as well as any man alive. If he believes Normandy is real... But again, the specter of Patton rises in the minds of the staff. Patton, the 1st U.S. Army Group, the massive camp near Dover, the tanks, the signals, the reports from Abwehr's most cherished source, Agent Garbo. Everything still pointing to Calais. Von Rundstedt closes his eyes briefly. He feels the weight of the war pressing into the lines of his face. When the Führer wakes, he says, we will present all evidence. Until then, we wait. A simple sentence, a fatal one. Across the channel at that very moment, on the sands of Omaha Beach, American infantry cling to shingle and broken obstacles as machine guns rake the surf. They wait for tanks that are sinking offshore. They wait for artillery support that cannot yet advance. They wait for a break in the German line that seems impossible. And all the while, the panzers, the one force capable of driving the invaders back, remain frozen in their barracks, engines cold, crews pacing in frustration. Back at Calais, the Dornier recon plane returns to base. The film canisters are removed with care, carried into a darkroom. An intelligence officer threads the negatives, squints through the viewer, and sees it. Rows of tanks, tents, supply dumps. Patton himself driving past a command vehicle. My God, he whispers. They're still preparing the main attack. Normandy is merely the opening act. He signs the report and sends it up the chain. By noon, that report is on von Rundstedt's desk. By 13:00, it reaches Jodl. By 14, Hitler is awake. He reads the report slowly, lips curling. The Allies will strike at Calais, he says, tapping the page. This, Normandy, is a diversion. It is the moment the deception becomes complete. For the next 7 weeks, Hitler leaves 15th Army stationed at Calais, convinced Patton is waiting to break through, even as bodies pile on Normandy beaches, even as Allied forces pour inland, even as the Western Front collapses, all because of the Phantom Army. Back in Dover, Corporal Reed watches another line of inflatable tanks sway in the afternoon wind. He doesn't know it yet, but the illusion he and his men maintain has just locked German reinforcements in place at Calais, sealing the fate of France. Illusion has become strategy, and strategy has become victory. June 10th, 1944. Near Boulogne-sur-Mer, France. The cold morning mist clings to the cliffs overlooking the channel as a courier truck rattles toward the 15th Army's forward intelligence station. Inside, 2 officers hunch over a crate, steadying themselves as the vehicle lurches over broken cobblestones. The crate holds the latest reconnaissance prints, the clearest set yet. They were taken just before dawn by a Jew 188, flying so low that the pilot returned with salt spray streaked across his canopy. The photographs inside are expected to confirm what every German officer still believes. Patton's tanks gathering for the real invasion. At 6:52, the crate thuds onto a steel table inside the intel hut. The lights flicker. Lieutenant Karl Hosinger, thin as a reed and jittery from no sleep, pulls on cotton gloves and starts arranging the glossy prints beneath a magnifying lamp. He inhales once, sharp and controlled. The first photo shows the familiar sprawl of tents, vehicles lined neatly, tracks in mud, camouflage netting. Everything that has been there for weeks. But something feels wrong. He leans closer. The shadows from the tanks, identical. Too identical. The canvas ripples look almost repeated, as though stamped instead of captured. He flips to the next photo. The same tank line from another angle. Again, the shadows fall perfectly consistent, as though the sun hasn't moved. Oh, but it has. He checks the timestamp. 3 hours apart. Impossible. Hosinger frowns, calls over another officer. Together, they examine the prints. The tanks lack weight, no subsidence in the soil, no oil stains, no ruts consistent with armored movement. The tracks behind them are too shallow, too smooth, dragging marks, not churned earth. For the first time since D-Day, doubt slips in like a blade. Get me Blumentritt, Hosinger whispers. Within an hour, the general stands over the same table, studying the photos with a hard, unforgiving stare. His jaw moves, clenching lightly, a tic that appears only when something deeply unsettles him. Could these be fakes? He mutters. The officers glance at each other. No one wants to say it outright. Not after weeks of insisting the Allies were still preparing to strike at Calais. But then another officer enters, a radio specialist from the signals branch. He holds a flimsy in his hand, a sheet of transcribed Allied radio traffic. Sir, he says, voice cracking slightly, we believe some of these transmissions may be fabrications. Blumentritt turns. Explain? The operators repeat call signs in a pattern, the specialist says. Too clean, too regimented, almost rehearsed. The room chills. They built a false network, Blumentritt whispers, realization dawning like a storm. A phantom radio army? He sits heavily in a chair, rubbing his temples. Outside, the low drone of an Allied bomber formation passes overhead, France shaking under the weight of a war that has already moved beyond Calais. The real invasion force is crawling up the hedgerows south of the beaches, linking up, expanding, pushing inland. And here, at Calais, nothing moves. No Allied ships mass in the channel. No convoys assemble in broad daylight. No columns of armor shift toward embarkation points. The horizon shows only wind and gulls and the endless, empty sea. Blumentritt straightens slowly. We have been deceived, he says, the words dredged from somewhere deep and reluctant. Patton's army. It may not exist at all. A stunned quiet falls over the room. Then a single sentence breaks it. What does this mean for Normandy? The answer is obvious. It means disaster. Because for 4 days, the panzers have remained idle. For 4 days, the Germans have held their strongest reserves in the wrong place. For 4 days, the Allies have bled and climbed and crawled inland without facing the armored hammer that could have shattered them. Blumentritt slams a fist into the table. We must redeploy at once. But already it's too late. Across France, the Allied wedge is widening. Paratroopers link up with infantry. Tanks roll off the beaches. Supply lines grow deeper by the hour. Town after town falls under the relentless push. By the time the 15th Army begins to move, the momentum of the war has shifted. The deception has done its work. Back in England, on the bluff near Dover, Corporal Reed watches another visitor arrive at the Phantom camp. A photographer sent to document the fading illusion before the props are dismantled. Reed stands beside a row of deflating tanks, limp canvas sagging as crews release the air. "What'll happen to all this?" the photographer asks. Reed shrugs. "We pack it, burn it. Doesn't matter, it served its purpose." He pauses, watching one last inflatable Sherman collapse like a dying beast. "Funny," he says quietly. "All this wasn't real, but it may have been the most important army of the war." Behind him, Fletcher powers down the radio set. The final transmission sent, the final act completed. The silence in the tent feels enormous after so many days of carefully crafted chaos. "We fooled them," Fletcher whispers. Reed nods once. And across the channel, the German high command sits in stunned disbelief, realizing the truth too late. The Allies didn't just outfight them. They outthought them. June 12th, 1944. The outskirts of Calais, a gray, wind-battered defensive line overlooking the channel, once expected to be the decisive battlefield of the war. Now, only silence hangs over the trenches and gun emplacements. No Allied flotilla appears on the horizon. No landing craft churn toward the shore. The sea rolls endlessly, mocking the men who have waited here for the real invasion that never comes. Major Rolf Steiner stands on a concrete firing step, binoculars raised. His eyes sting from 2 nights without sleep, but he cannot stop scanning the empty blue distance. He lowers the glasses and clenches them at his side. "Nothing," he mutters. Again, a younger officer, Lieutenant Weber, hovers nearby. "Sir, command says the Allies are concentrating everything on Normandy now." Steiner doesn't answer. He turns and gazes back at the inland fields where anti-tank positions and machine gun nests sit in immaculate readiness, untouched, pristine, useless. He finally speaks. "And we were kept here, all this time." His voice cracks with a mixture of anger and humiliation, waiting for ghosts. Behind him, trucks rev their engines, loaded with troops who have just been ordered south. The 15th Army is finally being released, but 4 days too late, perhaps 4 weeks too late. Roads must be traveled. Fuel must be rationed. Bridges must be crossed. Moving an army takes time, and time is the one thing Hitler's delay stole forever. Steiner looks skyward as a formation of Allied fighter-bombers flashes overhead, heading south toward Normandy. Not one plane veers toward Calais. The enemy cares nothing for this place anymore. The deception has drained it of meaning. At 16, my sir, a frantic message arrives at the divisional command post. Allied forces have broken through near Comont. Panzer Lehr struggling to hold position. Request immediate support. The message is repeated, desperate. The static in the transmission scratches like claws. Steiner folds the paper slowly, as though the motion itself hurts. "We should have been there," he says. But the truth is harsher. They could have been there only if the Phantom Army had never existed. Meanwhile, across the channel, the deception apparatus is being dismantled with quiet efficiency. June 12th, 1944. 17:10 hours. Kent, England. The bluff where the first U.S. Army group once stood is now littered with sagging canvas, half-deflated tanks, collapsed tents, and abandoned wooden mock-ups. Corporal Reed helps drag a long chain of camouflage netting into a pile. His boots sink into mud churned not by armor, but by days of foot traffic. The illusion is dissolving into pieces. Paint flaking, ropes frayed, radio masts stripped for parts. Nearby, a demolition crew prepares to burn a row of props that are too damaged to reuse. Fletcher stands beside him, staring at the field as though waking from a dream. "Strange," Fletcher says softly. "We made noise for days. Now there's nothing." Reed wipes sweat from his forehead with a sleeve. "Our job was to be loud, then vanish." A truck backs up with a hiss of brakes. Men load wooden tank frames onto the flatbed, stacking them like discarded stage scenery. In a way, that's all they ever were. Theater props for the largest stage in human history. A captain strides over, clipboard tucked under his arm. "Make sure those transmitters are signed off," he tells Fletcher. "Command wants everything packed and ready to redeploy. We're shifting operations to new deception sites closer to the front." Fletcher raises an eyebrow. "More illusions?" "Different ones," the captain replies. "But after this, the brass-nosed deception works. It works better than anyone imagined." He walks off, leaving the 2 men in the hush of the dismantled camp. Reed looks across the bluff toward the horizon. "Think the Germans will ever know?" A voice answers behind them, calm, aged, deliberate. "Oh, they will know," says a man in a tweed coat. Colonel John Bevan, chief architect of the London Controlling Section, the maestro of the Allied Deception Orchestra. His hands are clasped behind his back as he surveys the camp. He steps closer, lowering his voice. Their officers will study the records. They'll see the phantom divisions, the bogus radio traffic, the double agents, the inflated tanks. They'll realize how easily a single false narrative can cripple an entire front. His eyes narrow with a gravity that neither Reed nor Fletcher has ever heard from him. But they will recognize one truth most of all, that the battle for France was decided the moment they trusted the shadows we cast for them. Reed feels a chill, though the wind is warm. As evening settles over the camp, he listens to the gulls crying overhead. Far across the sea, the real fight rages on, men bleeding in hedgerows, tanks grinding through orchard walls, Allied supply ships flooding into newly captured ports. But he knows that somewhere, in a dim German headquarters, officers are staring at maps with dawning horror, realizing the truth. They were watching the wrong army. June 13th, 1944. 03 about 20 hours. Near Saint-Lô, Normandy. German panzers roar down a country road under moonlight, engines screaming, treads sparking as they grind over fractured pavement. Dust clouds billow behind them. They are desperate now. Too late. Much too late. By the time they reach the front, Allied forces have entrenched, reinforced, and expanded. Fresh divisions land every hour. Artillery is in place. Air power dominates the sky. The window to strangle the invasion at birth has closed forever. And it closed because the Germans waited for Patton's army to appear at Calais. An army that was nothing more than rubber, plywood, canvas, and lies. June 14th, 1944. The Wolf's Lair, East Prussia. A dense forest fortress of concrete bunkers, guard towers, and thick summer air buzzing with insects. Inside the dim, armored conference hall, the mood is brittle. Maps spread across tables show the Western Front widening like a wound. Red pins, Allied positions, creep inland mile by mile. General Alfred Jodl stands rigid beside a communications officer who holds a stack of newly decoded Allied intercepts. Sweat trickles down the young man's temple. He knows every word he's about to deliver carries consequences well beyond the walls of this bunker. Mein Führer, Jodl begins, voice tight. 15th Army reports continued absence of Allied troop concentrations opposite Calais. Their reconnaissance flights show no embarkation activity, no naval assembly. Hitler remains still, one hand pressed on the table, knuckles white. His eyes, glassy and red-rimmed from lack of sleep, flick between the reports and the map. He taps a finger against Calais once, twice. The gesture is mechanical, as if refusing to believe what logic demands. Jodl continues. Conversely, our forces at Normandy report the enemy has landed significant reinforcements. Estimates now exceed 12 divisions. They're expanding in all directions. Hitler's head lifts sharply. Garbo reported the main attack will strike here. He jabs a finger at the Pas-de-Calais. Patton's army must still be preparing. Silence blankets the room. Keitel clears his throat. Mein Führer, our latest imagery suggests the forces near Dover may not be authentic? Hitler stiffens. Not authentic. What are you implying? Jodl signals to the communications officer, who lays the damning evidence on the table. Side-by-side reconnaissance photographs taken days apart. Identical tank shadows, identical tent alignments, identical supply dumps. Not one item has shifted in a way a real army would. Hitler snatches up the prints, scrutinizing them with a fury so intense it might scorch the paper. It must be sabotage, he snaps, or incompetence, or... Keitel interrupts softly. Mein Führer, it may be a deception, a very elaborate one. The word deception hangs in the air like a poison. Another officer, Colonel Schmundt, approaches with a separate file, radio analyses from signals intelligence. The transmissions from FUSAG show irregular repetition. Patterns suggest a small number of operators simulating an entire network. Hitler's eyes widen, then narrow into slits. You're telling me the Americans built a phantom army? Out of thin air. No one answers. He slams a fist against the table. Patton, he whispers. Patton himself, did he not appear in the sector? Keitel nods grimly. Yes, mein Führer, but that may have been part of the deception as well. The realization comes like a blow. The Allies used their most aggressive general not to lead the invasion, but to sell a lie. Hitler's voice turns low, venomous. They used him as bait. Jodl steps forward. If Calais was the feint, then Normandy is the real invasion. Somewhere deep inside the bunker, a door slams. A distant generator hums. Outside, the forest rustles. Under a warm breeze that doesn't reach the suffocating gloom in the chamber. Hitler walks to the wall map, tracing the Allied advance with trembling fingers. We held the 15th Army at Calais for 4 days. 4 crucial days. He swallows. And because of that, we lost the chance to throw them back into the sea. No one contradicts him, because they all know it's true. June 14th, 1944, 14:30 hours. Normandy, the countryside southwest of Bayeux, is alive with the roar of engines. Distant artillery and the rumbling advance of Allied armor. Fresh American, British, and Canadian units stream inland, columns of trucks, tanks, anti-aircraft guns, fuel trailers, and bulldozers carving new roads into France. The German front bends, then buckles. By now, the truth is clear even to officers at the front. Reinforcements from Calais are arriving too late, and too scattered to make a difference. A German captain, retreating toward a new defensive line, mutters to his lieutenant, They tricked us, every last one of us. We fought shadows while the real enemy walked through the door. The lieutenant nods, face streaked with mud and exhaustion. We weren't defeated at Normandy. We were defeated in England. He means the Phantom Army. The empty tents, the hollow tanks, the fake radio chatter. the illusion that held the panzers hostage. Back in England, sunset glows over the dismantled deception site. Fletcher sits on a crate, listening to the fading wind whistle through the last deflated tank. Reed joins him, canteen in hand. Think they realize it now? Reed asks quietly. Fletcher nods. Oh yes. By now, every German general from Calais to Berlin knows they were chasing a ghost. Reed chuckles under his breath. A ghost that saved thousands of lives. They sit there in silence, watching the final shadows of evening stretch across the empty field, where the greatest fictional army in history once stood. Tomorrow the remains will be gone, but its mark on history will not.